Welcome to the Unofficial Controller Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast, episode 229, with me, George, and this week joined by Seb. Artistry personified to my crude AI art. How's it going?
It's going well, man. How are you doing today?
I am relaxed and energized. Had some good news over the weekend. So my girlfriend Rachel said yes to me, which is incredible news. So we're very happy with ourselves and looking forward to whatever next stage that brings. So yeah, exciting times.
So for those of us in America, you're basically saying you bent the knee and you proposed, and she said yes.
I genuinely bent the knee.
Bent the knee.
Yeah, and she said yes. So very happy they're very happy times. So I just wanted to share that with our wonderful listeners. They're here for the good times and the bad. So here's one of the good times. Welcome on board.
Congratulations, man. So did you have this all planned out? Did you just kind of, have a plan in mind and stuck to it? Or did you kind of this just felt right, I'm gonna go for it?
Well, I asked Rachel's father a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Got the ring and then just been waiting for the right moment, really. And the right moment presented itself. And yeah, executed the plan at a local spot where we used to go for walks when we first met. So it was a very romantic little thing. And very happy about that. So good news for the show. Good news for me. Not going to change anything. Don't panic. If you're driving down the interstate or an A road in the UK and you're like, hang on a minute, does this mean you're taking my show away? Don't worry. I'm first and foremost wedded to the Unofficial Controller Podcast, so you can't get rid of me that easy. But lots of well wishes on the Discord and Instagram and all that sort of good stuff. So I'm very grateful for everyone for the support and the kind words. So I just wanted to put that out there. If I hadn't been able to thank you in person, thank you very much. With that all put to bed, sir, have you got any news for us, or are you going to regale us with what you've been playing?
Nah, man, I'll just jump into what I've been playing lately, and it's basically like a continuation of last week. I played through a lot of was it Katsumogumi Path of the Goddess? Yeah,
oh, yeah,
that one. Yeah, so I'm like, it's really fun. I think they did kind of subvert our expectations by it being more of a tower defense Devil May Cry game than actually like a just mash and bash your way through like a Devil May Cry setting. So it's Capcom storytelling still. So I'm like, you could take that for what you will. I think Capcom does a surface level job of actually presenting a narrative for the most part. It's more like the actual gameplay. So, that's a fun, but I would probably say 7 or 8 out of 10 title. I think I go back to Flintlock. I talked about Flintlock, Siege of Dawn, last week. I think that game is very flawed, and I do feel like it's almost like great value. We have this off-brand company or brand over here called Great Value, and it's not the it's for all the food groups. It is basically the cheaper alternative for all those food groups and alternatives here in the grocery store.
I know this is going to rock you because it's seen as a place of prestige and quality in America, but that's what we see Lidl as.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not know that. That's funny. But but yeah, the Flintlock seems like that for the Souls games and slightly God of War. I think I think the story and the setting is fun, but everything else, if you don't like Souls games, you're not going to like this game. So I think and it does everything a disservice in the things that it tries to do too much. So it doesn't actually nail a cohesive vision there. So I'm the more I play it, the more I dislike that game. So I think that's kind of fair. And then on the other side of the fence, I think some of the other games I've been playing have just kind of been nothing too substantial. It's kind of been a quiet time outside of college football. What about you, George? What have you been playing?
Well, mate, I downloaded last week. If people tuned in, they're expecting me to regale them stories of Mountain Bannerlord 2.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
you liking it?
Mate, this week's whipped by. I haven't even looked at it, to be honest with you. I looked at my playing history before we came on air and I thought, oh my goodness, all I've done is play MLB. Probably a sniff of Dave the Diver, and that's probably where I'm at. So I don't really want to labour on that too much because no one needs to hear another poor George pitching story on MLB. Although what we will talk about briefly in the road to the show, they have something called the sliders. It's got something called dynamic difficulty.
Mhm.
I'm pretty good at MLB now, but
Like legitimately good.
pitcher, I can't hit the ball for toffee. It's never
Okay,
happening.
gotcha.
Right? I don't know what it is with me, but I've never really laboured on that side of the game. We've talked before. It doesn't really interest me. It's just big hits, and it's interesting, but I'm more into the pitching, the strategy. Well, the better you do, the higher the sliders go, the harder it is to be good. And I
Yeah.
find that actually one of the most frustrating things about MLB because you're constantly fighting. I'm already, as I am every time I play this game, very high up into the All-Star Plus difficulty rating already. And it makes transitioning through the junior league super tough. It really does. Like, who's going to pick me up when I look like Joey Average? If you take...
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry to
I was
interrupt.
going to say, if you take the sliders off, you come across as, literal God incarnate in a glove. But that's... I don't like to play with no sliders because it is too easy. But if you play with the sliders, after a while, your enjoyment just hits a brick wall because you just hit this brick wall of slider where maybe you have one game or half a game where you just can't pitch anything at all, just a bunch of fists every time. And you're not pressing the buttons any differently. You're not releasing any differently. What's happened is the difficulty slider has notched up maybe one or two more pixels, and that's like the brick wall for my skills. So then it takes maybe half a game or a great game to realize that, we've made it too difficult for him. So we're going to notch it back down. And then you have a couple of games where you feel like you're a hero again. And it's not as though it's easy. It's right on the edge of, it's right on that difficulty edge. So you could say the road to the show sliders are doing a good job. But when you're in between one side of the slider losing every game and the other side of the slider winning every game, something doesn't feel right there for me, Seb. That slider has been the same for years now, and it needs some work.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good idea, but it feels like a half-baked execution strategy there. It's like,
I was going to say, I agree with you. I think it's a great idea to give you a permanent challenge, especially in Road to the Show. But its implementation at the thick end to an experienced player like myself just leads to like frustration, really, I would say.
I think it's better for novices of that game to where like they can gradually learn the concepts and gradually get better. But like as you say, on the higher end, it feels like it's holding you back rather than pushing you forward to another plateau.
And that's my point. And you made a good point there. When I first started playing MLB, the sliders really helped. But now I'm an experienced player at the other end of the spectrum. The sliders really do my head in because you can't just get consistent form. But I don't want to take it off.
I do feel like these other sports games do a great job of like that of handling difficulty levels. So for instance, we were talking about like NCAA last week of like when you go to that higher level Heisman difficulty, it feels like there's a ramp. It feels like the computer just is out for blood at that point. But then there's like there's almost like four levels underneath that you can gradually set. I think like one of the things I like about those is you could pick that difficulty and then like go in there and handle like sliders to make it more either user friendly or also like more computer heavy as far as the difficulty goes. Because I feel like some aspects I feel like are still too easy, so I ramp up that difficulty quite a bit. Like I feel like I want to be punished if I throw a bad pass, not necessarily like intercepted every time, but I'm going to be like I want consequences to all my actions.
Yeah, and that is, I suppose, I agree with you 100%. You want consequences for your actions. If I sort of badly release a pitch, I do expect it to veer wildly from where I wanted it to go. I do expect it to just be a bag of spanners when it leaves my hand, and therefore probably end up smack bang sweet in the middle of the strike zone.
Yeah.
Served up ready for the most audacious home run you've ever seen. And one of the matches I was playing, I got unlucky, really. I had at least a couple of strikes on a couple of batters that came up. And unfortunately, they ended up getting a hit. And I loaded the bases. Now, I normally enjoy it. I don't do it on purpose, but when I load the bases, I normally like, right, this is where I step up. I keep me cool. I strike the next guys out and I sit them all down. Might even get a double play as well, just to completely kill it on the field. And you set all that up and you think, yeah, great. Do you know what? I'm gonna deal with this. But then, because of the way the sliders are, bam, that next guy up, no matter. And the frustrating thing is, right, outside the zone, fastball, slow ball, curve ball. I don't even care what I give them. I guarantee they're going to smash it. And then you're 3 runs down.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It's bad timing, I suppose. And to all those people that don't even know what baseball is, I'm sure they're like, guys, give it a rest now. The other game I've been playing, Dave the Diver, do you know what? Still enjoying it. I like I'm going to say it again. I am zero interested in sushi, but I am very interested in sticking one of those bad boys on the end of a harpoon. That's all I'm going to say about Dave the Diver.
We're going to have to, not this episode, but in an episode in the future, we're going to have to debate whether or not that's an indie game, because there was a huge debate about that one. And then whether or not, is that one of your favorite indies now? I think that would be an interesting conversation for the future. I do want to pivot a little bit because I know we have to get to the news stories here. It's I want to, instead of at the end, I want to approach this now do you foresee yourself playing these games, or is there games that you kind of look towards in the future that I think I'm going to move to this in the weeks to come or the days to come?
In terms of a new game on the horizon?
Yeah, or a new game or a game on your checklist or dock list.
Backlog, yeah. At the minute, and I know this can be taken both ways, but because there's plenty of games out there that, neither of us have played and plenty of the listeners haven't played either, there's a massive list. And if you take that list into backlog, it's huge. But in terms of immediate interesting games that I've got right now, I just feel like I'm treading water on some of the open projects I've got on the go that I'm not actually that majorly interested in. I'm trying to keep the decks clear. I don't really want to get too wrapped up in something new until Star Wars Outlaws lands. When that lands, I want to be able to give it my everything. Yeah, it's some time off. Don't get me wrong.
For sure.
But it's not that far away. Whereas maybe starting a new game now of a decent size would present itself as a bit of a clash at the end of the month. And I don't. I've got into some bad gaming habits recently. I've cracked the lid on more games than I should. I used to have this mantra: play a game, finish it, kill it, park it, move on to the next thing. And I seem to have, off the back of last year, really have 2 or 3 open projects on my desk, and it's I just need these games now to go away. So I'm either this weekend, if I get opportunity, and it's not looking likely, so hopefully while I'm on holiday, I can just finish off some of these because they're causing me gaming anxiety, and I just want them to be gone.
You have about a month until Outlaws. As we're recording this, is the 24th of July. So I think that's August 30th, and so I'm you have a month until then. That's a good time to just dive into one game, though.
Exactly. I need
really
to
play hardcore one game.
The one that's causing me the most concern at the moment, it's not really concern, but I want to give the respect it's due. Although I'm going to be controversial here. I don't think it's as compelling as the first game, Alan Wake 2. That's been in the rotation for some time now. I'm not giving an update on that, but I loved the first Alan Wake. I thought it was really joyous. The remaster or the remake that we got maybe beginning of last year or maybe the end of last year, the year before that, do you know what? It's okay. It's serviceable. It
Yeah.
did kind of remind me that my brain had and this was the remaster, but my brain had remembered Alan Wake very fondly, a little bit too fondly, really, because the remaster still looked ropey compared to what my imagination was. But that's fair enough. Alan Wake 2 certainly is in the ballpark. I've just
It's a
not.
looker. I'm not a horror
Hey,
person.
do you know what? It looks great. I've talked about this. The seamless transition from video that looks 4K at least, or very, very, very high definition,
Yeah.
that then soaks into the gameplay. And I'm probably talking the studio transition to those that have played it as the most beautiful example of that. The game is a looker. The game's got great story, but for some reason, its component parts don't really add up for me to give enough of a damn. And I feel really guilty for that because I loved Alan Wake 1. It was a great game in my eyes, not only original concept and release on 360, but also its subsequent remaster and re-release on every platform under the sun. So when I arrived at Alan Wake 2, a moment that should have been, for me, glorious fanfare, after that initial, wow, these graphics are something else had resided, I kind of felt a bit, shortchanged, Seb, if I'm honest. What's your
Huh.
thoughts on that?
I'm not a horror person, so I very surface leveled played Alan Wake 1 and 2, so I can't give the deep dive comparison between the two. But I mean, for what I did play of Alan Wake 2, I think the visuals are spectacular. I think like the
For sure.
voice acting is immaculate. I do feel like some of the story beats, as far as like the intro story beats, were expertly told. I can't speak to the gameplay isms of that game of like, is this a great video game or is this a great
Mm,
spectacle? And I think like
it's a great spectacle, in
mhm.
my humble opinion. The gameplay elements are, to me anyway, the light on the guys, the shoot the shadow people. It's the same shtick, except for some reason it feels less satisfying in Alan Wake 2. And I know this was some people's game of the year, and I'm not here to hate on it on purpose just to whip up controversy. I'm not into all that. I'm just saying that I feel impressed, but actually quite disappointed. They hit the metric on the graphics, but I feel the rest of the game. I don't want to be too harsh on it because I know it is a good game, but something within there, some
let,
parts of the ingredients of that cake
let me ask you a question because
don't taste right to me.
I think this question might, like be indicative. And I'm speaking as a person who's on the outside looking in, as since I'm not a horror person. I wonder, has Capcom done such a good job with the Resident Evil games that you kind of compare that, or at least that style of gameplay, to Alan Wake and what Alan Wake is?
I
Like,
can't, I can't, I can't be guilty of that because bar a little bit of a play about while someone else was playing 2 and 3, I haven't really played them. Um,
okay, you didn't play like Biohazard 7 or 8 or anything like that either?
yeah, I've played those. Don't get me wrong, but
Because I
I
was like, all those have come out since the first Alan Wake has come
all
out,
those have come out since the first Alan Wake came out. But for me, Alan Wake told a different story. I don't like horror like you. I'm not a big fan of, horror movies or whatever. I've always had a soft spot for Resi, right? I don't see it necessarily as horror. I know it's been lumped into that category, but I don't necessarily see it as that.
Mhm.
Alan Wake, I don't necessarily see as horror either. There's nothing in there that's terrifying. There's a couple of jump scares. There's a couple of jump scares, but there's no pinhead. There's no people pulling their faces off and anything like that. There's nothing like that in it. It's more of a dark, shadowy, kind of loose connotation of evil rather than something that's staring you in the face.
Suspenseful thriller with gothic vibes.
A suspenseful thriller with gothic vibes is probably one of the most intricate ways I've ever heard that franchise described, and I think it fits perfectly. Um, Alan Wake 2, I don't compare it. I see it as a little bit of a different thing. I see it more. I know you don't get to choose your direction per se, but it feels more like a Quantic Dreams game to me in its
Oh,
presentation. I know it's a lot more hands on than that, and there's a lot more
mhm.
physicality of controls than that. But to me, what I liked about Alan Wake 1 was they told a great story. and then they enabled the gameplay to allow you to move from one story beat to the next. I just feel like Alan Wake 2's kind of, well, we better double down on the controls and the gameplay. Yeah, unfortunately, to the lack of some of the things that I found to be really championed in the first game.
Okay. I was just wondering if, like, because like Alan Wake has this, on the outside looking in, keep in mind I haven't played a whole lot, but it has this like almost walking sim isms to it. And then it
Yeah.
also has like these survival horror tropes to it as well. And like both those genres, since the first Alan Wake has come out, has evolved so much. Both the walking sim, the horror genre, the action adventure horror genre as well. I'm like, all those we've seen such like new highs and iterations and what that genre was since the first Alan Wake is. It's like I was wondering if that was like what was triggering in the back of your head of like that
No,
comparison between those.
like I say, just to really kind of make this clear, I liked the first Alan Wake. I loved it. In a
Hmm.
way, probably too much, actually, Seb, if I'm honest, because in that interim period, and it was a long time, you build in your mind where you think the story's going. You build in your mind what you think you might want from the second game. We're all guilty of this. The second game trailers look good, gameplay footage looked good. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm up for this. But then it landed, and I'm not saying it's a bad game. From any metric you look at it, it's an 8+ out of 10 game. Turn that into percentage if you want to. It's easy done, right? It's a
Yeah.
very, very well received game. I'm coming at it from a very keen fan of the first game in its very first iteration, warts and all. And I just don't feel. I'm going to say this now. I might live to regret this, but Alan Wake 2 is almost too well done.
Huh.
That studio's
Too
come on.
polished.
In a way, yeah. I know everyone's going to be like, oh, George is not marking a game down because it's too polished. Yeah, it's polished to the point where you lost some of that sort of fear in the controls and the kind of nervousness to explore, all of that. And yeah, there was something in the kind of like half jankiness of Alan Wake that actually carried some scare element to it into the actual presentation. I know that sounds crazy, but it kind of all added up together to be this double A game that was really quite punching. It's now come with a triple A budget in the sequel, but it seems to have forgotten all the bits. I'm a very peculiar person, and maybe everyone else is wondering what the hell is George talking about. There's something about Alan Wake 2 that just missed for me as a fan of the series.
Do
We'll
you feel
see.
like it was too much time between the entry between the first one and the sequel? Like,
Definitely.
is-
Now, if I dipped into control, maybe I'd feel kind of like my hunger was satiated or sated, but uh, I don't think so. I played around with control, and I know there's a good game in there, but at the time when I downloaded it to give it a try, I was like, ooh,
just didn't click with you?
it just was at that moment. With this podcast, sometimes you've just got to focus on what you can focus on because you want to give a review, you want to talk about the game of the moment. And for whatever reason, I was so busy with other stuff that when I downloaded Control to dabble with it, because a good friend of the show, Finchy, said it was amazing, and I value
Shout out
his
Finchy.
opinion. Yeah, and I think that he is right. I just did not. It's enormity. I realised its sheer scale at the time and thought, oof, no, I need to wait. I need to give this the respect it deserved. Well, while I was giving it respect, Alan Wake 2 came out. So yeah, it's been an awfully long time between the two games. If you're including the remaster, it's not been that long. But if you're including the original incarnation, it's been a long time. Maybe too long. But anyway, that's a story for another day. I don't know how we got
Yeah,
in
for
that
sure.
site. What are you hoping to get stuck into over this next month before Star Wars Outlaws comes out and we have to drop everything and do probably 3 or 4 shows entitled Star Wars Outlaws Best Game of 2024?
Oh my
Question
goodness. If an
mark.
Ubisoft game is best game of 2024, the world has changed.
What's beating it? What's beating it? If it
Oh,
lands and it sticks the landing and it
okay.
produces us the game that we always wanted, and we say, do you know what? I don't mind these Assassin's Creed controls in this universe if it allows me to do this.
Yeah.
if they can stick that, that game's got potential. I know that we've seen lots of complaints about people with the deep dive gameplay trailer that they put out. And I know Ubisoft had to stick out I was made aware of a press release they put out where they were saying, don't judge it on this, for God's sake. You know, this was a vertical slice for a gameplay trailer. Don't get too carried away about what you think this is. By the time this game lands, you will be very happy with it. It's going to hit all the production values you want it to do. Because people have called it janky, on rails, a bad version of Uncharted, Assassin's Creed with a Star Wars skin. I mean, this list goes on.
Yeah, I think like if we're doing I think that would be a fun I guess you say exercise for like a show going forward of like predicting the top 5 game of the years. When you get back from holiday, we should do that. But like I foresee in my mind of minds, I foresee probably Astro Bot being very high on the game of the year list. Like
which is to me quite deserving. But
for sure.
What the hell sort of year are we having here at this point?
Yeah, that I think that's why the exercise would be so fun because like at this point, I feel like this year, I know a lot of people push back on it because we had, if you look at like the review scores of this year versus last year, there are actually like a lot of games that lean heavier towards this year. But again, it's so focused on that Japanese style of storytelling and they all sort of like blend in with each other. But like this year could have solid entries. Like I think like Metaphor ReFantazio, which is just like Persona though. It's like that comes out later this year. But again, it might get lost in that shuffle there.
I hope it doesn't, but my gut feeling says it will get buried. It will get buried.
I don't think it'll necessarily get buried because it's like it JRPG fans are going to be feasting on that game. I think it's going to get buried within like the year of JRPGs that have come out.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, gotcha.
If you're a kid or a teen or whatever, and you've waited all year for Christmas for a game, that's going to be quite far down the list in terms of what you're asking Father Christmas for.
You got Zelda for y'all Switch players. Like Legend of Zelda.
You see my point? Where if you're a teen, if you don't have disposable income and you have to buy less games, and you're a JRPG fan, come Christmas, you're not going to know what to do with yourself. But I tell you what, you can have a hell of a lot of choice of games to pick through. And if you're kind of a game for Christmas, birthdays, bank holidays, Easter's kind of person, then I don't know. You're going to pick up Persona 3 Reloaded? Yeah, probably. Are you going to pick up Final Fantasy 7 Part 2? Yeah, more than likely. The other stuff, and they're what, 60-hour games?
Yeah, I mean, hell, all these JRPGs are like 60 to 70-hour games. It's like
show me the look in there where when I say it's sadly might get buried, I sadly believe it's going to get buried.
Yeah, it's one of those. This is one of those years to where I'm like, last year everybody got to feast on a high quality game that was more of a wide audience game. This year is like it has to be your taste in order for you to feel like you're feasting. Because I'm like, man, you got so many of these JRPGs and RPGs, and I love that, and I love those genres. It's just there's a lot of them. They get bled into one another.
If it's the perfect year, last year was the perfect year for everybody.
Damn near everybody, yeah, for sure.
This year's more of a specific connoisseur type year where JRPGs can be for everybody. We've learned through Yakuza or Like a Dragon that people have been drawn into that world. I think Persona's drawn a lot of people into that world. I think as a game to bring you in, a modern JRPG like Persona 5 or Like a Dragon is something that can fundamentally teach you about JRPG in the way that the classic JRPGs never had the budget or ability to do. So it's a very gentle, soft landing into a modern JRPG. It's a very soft, maybe, and this is leveled at Persona 5, but you go quite deep into that game before you've got the full game unlocked to you, as you can speak to, I'm sure. You get little drip feeds of like, oh, you're going to do some extracurricular activity at school. You're going to start working in the coffee shop. You're going to start doing this. You're going to start doing that. And it's a very slow drop of the mechanics, which modern gaming has treated us to. So if you are a connoisseur or you're looking at getting into the idea, now's a great time. But there's just so much high caliber stuff out this year specifically, as you said, that's catered very towards that
It's niche focused as opposed to
Eastern
general
storytelling style.
Yeah.
That I don't know. How do you even have time to do all of them? If you went back to back on them all, you'd still be on your second game halfway through the year. It's craziness.
I think it is Nintendo's year for Game of the Year, because I think like between Zelda and the Mario Brothers game, like Mario and Luigi Brothership, I'm like, I think they got a straight path, open window, basically. And I think like the only thing standing in Nintendo's way this year is Astro Bot. As far as mainstream appeal, as far as like Game of the Year, I think that's the only game.
I might live to regret this, and I do believe Astro Bot's going to score very highly. I've had my sort of doubts, but I've had more of a toe in Astro Bot than most. I played the VR missions. I played the Playroom that came with PSVR as a very free download in the background. I also played the AI camera Playroom demo that Nintendo PlayStation bundled in with the launch of the PS4 camera. I've played a lot of Astro Bot, and I did see some recycled assets in that in the new game, which made me a bit nervous. Sure. But you know, I'm all for it. The more we hear about it, the more interesting it is. I just can't. That's going to score well, and it looks like a well-crafted Sony exclusive again, full marks. I just can't see that. Ugh. We'll see. Do you know what? I wouldn't have considered the free Astro Bot PS5 game being as good as it was. And if that had been an actual game release, albeit short, no doubt the price would have reflected the length.
It would have been a contender in 2020, man.
But that's what I'm saying. It would have been a contender. So who am I to say that a fully delivered premium Astro Bot experience won't be considered Game of the Year quality? It will. I just don't know if we live in that world yet, Seb. I just don't know if we live in that world.
The crazy thing is, it's like between the way this year is going, we could have a DLC expansion as a Game of the Year contender, Final Fantasy, Astro Bot, and 2 Nintendo games is what I'm seeing. Is like as legitimately Game Awards, you know, most actual game outlets Game of the Year contenders. I think it's like Mario. I think it's going to be Mario, Luigi Brothership. Probably it's going to be Astro Bot. Zelda. What is it? Legend of Echoes or whatever the game with Zelda.
I'd have been tempted to lob in Hello Games' Light No Fire into that pot, but do you know what? With the latest update, and I have spent some time on that actually in the what you've been playing section.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like they've just popped their cork via No Man's Sky for everything they had going on in Light No Fire. Everything I've seen, I've been like, oh, that's what I was looking forward to in Light No Fire. Oh, what this? I was looking forward to seeing that in Light No Fire. It's a different game, but some of the stuff in the world, I was like, oh man, why have you done this? You know, everyone was happy with No Man's Sky. You could have left it, but you've done another massive update, Worlds, which you've called Part 1. Which makes me think that you're going to bring out another massive update. That's what's in the news. Like, what the hell are they doing?
That game's niche enough to where I'm like, the audience is going for it is really going to love that game. But like, its mainstream appeal, I think, is limited. It's in a way that I think, like, if you hit... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, until I agree with you, but if it lands and sticks a story and it's compelling enough, there's nothing to stop it being... I don't think it would win, but I think it could end up in the conversation, which again I find actually quite bizarre.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you like video games, podcasts, and reminiscing? I'm actor, video game writer, and total sweetie pie Connor Savage McCabe, and on each episode of Call Me By Your Game, I sit down with a guest for an intimate look at a special game from their past. Did you and your dad beat Spyro the Dragon over the holidays? Or was Halo 4 the one thing that united your roommates during your senior year of college? Stories like these are what Call Me By Your Game is about. From video game content creator Janet Garcia to Hades voice actor Courtney Vinays, I interview wonderful comedians and game industry friends about these memories. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe someday you'll call me by your game.
I'm forgetting one. Dragon Age. I think Dragon Age is going to be one that, if they land it, a lot of people are going to love that game. But then, are going to be raving about that game. But then, like, I think if there's one game in particular that I think if they get that out of early access and are able to release that mainline game, it might take this year, and that's Hades 2.
Yeah,
Hades 2 at this point.
Mate, listen, if they can get that out, and it's as good as we know it is.
I played Hades 2, and it's, oh my god.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
So it's in their best interest to rush that out in a way. It's good enough right now. It's good enough.
If it is good enough, if there is a couple of like aspects to where like it feels like they're about to add new bosses to that game. And I'm so curious on what some of the new content is, but it's really good enough right now to be.
Yeah, that's cool. Just give us the game, because they've got pretty strong chance of a shoe-in for Game of the Year.
Man, you got the way I would have to describe Hades 2's gameplay right now is the same way we say Fat Ganzif's name on this podcast. You got to say it with that Fat Zangief or that Hades 2 gameplay. You got to say it with that same kind of vigor and lust in your voice there. But yeah, it's The crazy thing is, it's like if they release it this year, it's Game of the Year to me. But then if they release it next year, it might not be Game of the Year because GTA 6 is coming out. But it makes that year almost on par with 2023's like Game of the Year calendar of like
to give them the space and the good landing that game deserves, and that game deserves it. It needs to come out.
If they hit that November,
yeah, perfect. Game of the Year.
You hit it early November, you're golden. I think is because you'd be the latest thing out there before everyone starts voting
for the contention. For it to properly be in contention,
I would say do it next year because you could get it into consoles next year. Because even if they release it this year, it's probably going to only be PC.
Well, that would be a big bust. That would be a big bust, actually, because I would say probably the majority of the players now for that game would live on console.
Probably so, because I'm like, right now, it would only be on PC.
Yeah, the install base for console versus PC, despite what the master race would have us believe, is minimal. So why are you cutting your own leg off to force, get it out on the consoles and get on with it? Get it out on Switch, actually, guys.
Ugh.
Great game to take on the go, Seb. You might vomit in your mouth and then swallow it again, but yeah, that's a great game.
I agree. I just, there's a Steam Deck out there, ROG Ally, like there's so many.
How many installed Steam Decks are there versus Switches, though?
Oh, Switches are easily outnumbering the Steam Deck. It's a quantity over quality thing.
Get it out on the platform that can get you the most coins, so we can have an absolutely rip-roaring Hades 3 as well. Because don't drop the ball now, guys. In fact,
no, for sure.
Rest at Hades 2 and inject that magic into something else. I'm feeling a little bit fruity, and Pastor Longhorn wouldn't be able to call this a non. I think he'd actually call this a gaming news show, Seb, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, so we got to get on with the news.
We're changing things all the time. We've got a new intro for the news. It's just what I just did. I can't remember what it was, but it was good. We scoured the very darkest regions of the internet to bring you the latest stories. First up, AI surprise. This is what I wanted to talk to you about, Seb, because obviously the show has embraced AI. The world's embracing AI. But what is all this AI? Well, tech outlet Wired has put out a big report this week on AI in the video game industry, and that very report claims that Call of Duty has previously, so they've got away with it, Seb, AI sold some AI-generated content via the Modern Warfare 3 storefront. There's been no... Wow, you probably already paid for it, guys. There's no confirmation of this from the teams behind the series, but according to the outlet, AI had a hand in creating the Yoke's Wrath cosmetic pack for Modern Warfare 3. Now, because lots of cosmetic DLC is regularly rotated in and out the Call of Duty store, this pack isn't necessarily purchasable now. The report says that the pack was made by the end of the year. That being the end of 2023, when Modern Warfare 3 first launched. The report also claims that by July 2023, Activision had approved the use of certain generative tools in creating concept art and marketing materials, but no specific examples of this being put in practice were mentioned outside of the Yoke's Wrath DLC pack. Anyway, we must stress that this is all reported information at the moment and shouldn't be taken as gospel. We just figured it'd be interesting to think about nonetheless. We've heard a lot about AI in lots of industries in recent months, so we're bound to see the topic crop up more and more in gaming over the coming years. Now, AI in gaming, bit of a dirty word. We had Forever Skies community guru on, nowhere near Berlin, aka Greg Cummings, as you probably know him in the real world. But he was a little bit sort of very no on AI in games, and I get it. I probably didn't phrase the question properly, but if it's used in some of the interstitial moments to stitch together actual handcrafted pieces of work, so it feels more of a seamless transition within the game, I'm all for it. In terms of creating content almost automatically, as this is almost being described, I don't know what to make of that. I'll be honest. What do you make of this news story, Seb?
I think to talk about this news story with context and with, the subtlety that it kind of deserves, I think it's like AI in general is almost like the unofficial controller in general. It's like, it's not the concept, it's what you do with it that counts. AI is just a tool. It's the evil intentions of the person or the noble intentions of the person is really what matters about AI. So I'm like, it is one of those things to where I'm like, in video games, if AI is helping developers and not taking away their jobs and not taking away livelihoods and such like that, like if you're a brand new studio, you start off with 5 people, you decide from the very get-go, we're going to use AI to help some assets along. We're not taking away any jobs because there was never a job to begin with. I think AI is fabulous. I think
totally agree.
I think it's a great asset. If you're a major AAA company, there's been jobs and livelihoods that depend on like certain things being done, and you just take away that person's job and replace it with AI. It's dirty at that point. It feels like it's an evil tool at that point. Yeah. So I'm like, I think in this case, AI assets, I'm fine with people buying them. I'm fine with we live in a world where microtransactions are going to exist anyways. If you're creating them using AI at that point, I'm okay with it as long as it didn't take away anyone's job. But then like,
if it don't take away, I get your sentiments completely and I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
But this is asking someone to nickel and dime up on something that was never even created in a human being's brain. It's crazy.
I think like it's crazy
at that point, is that content worth it?
I think, like I always ask if live service is worth it, period. But it's like, it's worth it for a person who's willing to spend for it. The value of something is worth whatever someone's actually willing to shell out for it. But like, so I'm like, I think that concept is crazy now, but I think in the span of next year and the year after, we're going to be living in a world where games are 50% created by AIs, 30% created by AIs. So I'm thinking, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if like, again, it's like if the intentions were noble from the get-go.
My dream implementation of AI in video games is not to take away any of the artistry. It's not to take any jobs away. With what I'm saying, I'm realizing that it might take someone's job away, but let's see if it could be used to assist someone's job or assist in the creation, not even in the creation of the game. We'll get to what I would love AI to do. AI in a game would be great if it could be utilized to respond on the fly to your in-game actions at that moment, something that an artist or a scriptwriter could never do. right? So you slap an NPC, and a few people turn around and say, like, why did you slap him? Why did you slap that person? Or why did you just hit them with your yellow car, green car, blue car, red car? He's taking
Like
some
a personality inserts.
Yeah, it's just framing your actions more contextually within the game world to create believability, buy-in, and then to keep you hooked in the world, which is ultimately their main aim. It also could be used to supplement that sort of weird, clunky secondary mission type scenario where Horizon's a great example. They didn't use AI for it, but in the first Horizon, you get a side quest and it's stank of a side quest. It wasn't even the same camera angles. It looked weird. You get to Forbidden West, and they've managed to craft it so half the time I thought I was on a main story game when I was on one of the most random side quests going, because they drew you into the main game world and presented everything at the same level with the same risk, with the same presentation. I see AI being able to maybe assist in helping some of that secondary mission, or maybe even AI created missions, depending, because that's something where it could be really cool. You're in a world, you change something. Bethesda's is a great example. You go and kill everyone in Whiterun in Skyrim. Okay, boom, town's dead. What are you going to do about it? Well, wouldn't it be wonderful if within using AI, you go to another town and they say, "Oh, we heard on the grapevine because a scout and a trader went out to Whiterun to exchange some goods. That the place is completely empty. It's a ghost town." Oh, wow, this is interesting. This is different. So then the AI thinks, well, we can't have Whiterun completely empty. So let's create a side mission where he has to escort NPCs from this town to there to repopulate it.
I think that's intriguing. I also think like I've heard tell of AI being used to circumvent the legal handcuffs that have been placed on the Nemesis system. Of like because like the Nemesis system was handcrafted. If you use AI, you can circumvent. That's a different use of that program, and AI is using it at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you have AI and it's used to create a Nemesis system to where like in your example where that town is like been desecrated, say like there was a couple of survivors that ran off that you didn't get to.
Yeah.
Well, you get what I mean? And now they're
Right.
able to tell that story, and the descendants of the fallen are able to come after you, or like the relatives of the fallen. I'm like, it adds a whole new layer of storytelling there.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I
that
love the
is-
idea of getting the Nemesis system involved in that and creating lifelong enemies within the game world. Like, I'm buzzing at the concept. I don't want to
And-
see AI come in and kill people in the industry. No, not at all, because we need them now more than ever. But
Yeah.
to enable their dream to come across at the very highest production level and at the deepest level of intrigue and belief in the game world, that every time you try to break it, you just create a whole new plot twist. Like, yes.
Imagine, like I think AI in the sense that I listed some examples earlier with like a smaller indie studio with AI, like some of the details that people love in Red Dead Redemption 2 are able to come to smaller titles. Like some of those nuances of Red Dead Redemption 2 and
Yes.
1 are able to come to those smaller titles. And I think that's the usage of AI that we are looking forward to versus the demonization of like it just basically tearing away the livelihoods of people in top level corporations.
Yeah, and I don't want to see that. I'm forever grateful to those people, old and young, that slave away in this industry to give me something to do on a night time. And I value, when you roll credits on a game these days, it's probably longer than the game most of the time. It's like hours,
It is
isn't it?
stupid
Right?
long, isn't it? Yeah.
Every single one of those people has slogged their guts out. They've, they say they've got rid of the grind and the crunch in game publishing. Absolutely not a chance is that going anywhere. That's here to stay. And those people have been through that for fair reason or foul, and they've popped out the other end, and they're still charged up by the creative enterprise and want to create more games. I don't want to see anybody put out of a job because of AI, but if I can see their product raised to the next echelon of greatness because AI was able to stitch together some of the more disparate narrative pieces on the fly while you're playing it, dude, what can ever be bad about that?
Have you heard of normally normally we talk about like more of the console side of things, and I know you're not a really big PC player, but like I really want to talk about this particular instance of like, have you heard of BattleBit?
Hmm.
Okay, so
I can't
BattleBit,
say I have unless it was in the boot at some point in time because the name does ring a bell.
okay, so BattleBit is like a low polygon version of like Battlefield. It's like a very small team worked on a game, a FPS game.
I have seen Battle Bits, yeah.
Yeah,
It
so
was
I'm like,
quite big.
yeah, it is very much like a low poly bit, but like they have 254 people that are able to play in a single server. And so, and the battles and the maps are on fully destructible maps.
This
So
sounds
like,
like Sony before they had the outage in the early aughts. They had a game called
yeah,
MAG, Massive Action Gamer. It sounds
Mhm.
like someone's finally managed to deliver on the promise.
Yeah, I mean, and this is like an indie team, and they made like a Battlefield clone that is almost like, was it Roblox meets like almost Battlefield or Call of Duty, and
Yeah.
it's charming. It feels like that, but the reason why I bring this up is because I'm like, can you imagine what they would be able to do if they were able to use AI to create assets that would be like enhancing a Battlefield instead of like, so like when you clear one stage of a map, you have to go to another point of a map that's ever growing and ever changing. I'm
Yeah.
like, those are different levels of our usages of AIs that I find fascinating for the future. Cause I think that's like, I feel like if you could do that in the multiplayer space, the way you can do it with storytelling is going to be, oh, the chef's kiss.
Well, just to give you an example how we're utilizing AI on the show, we're using AI to up the sound recording levels automatically and to almost to edit the show. We're using AI to uh, produce our summaries, which is doing a better job than I ever could because it remembers everything that I forgot I'd said, summarizes it very neatly and concisely within it. It gives me the time back because recording, I don't make it sound onerous because, you know, we enjoy doing the show and we know people enjoy listening to it, but it gives you the time back on completion of recording to just kind of fire and forget. And it took me a few attempts to totally trust the process, but when you let go, perfect. I mean, everybody knows that we've talked for weeks now about when the show's finished, we want people to run the Bing AI art generator on some of the stuff that we've said and then lob the images back in the Discord or wherever, email them to us. Yeah, we just love seeing them. And we love people's creativity and what they achieve. To me, like AI at the moment, as it is on the fringes, is a very usable tool. I don't want to see it ever replace a human being, though, in any of the interactions I have with video games. That's for sure. Unless it's in the predetermined ones that we mentioned. But yeah, just to give our own show as an example, it's massively transformed our ability to put the show out. It's massively transformed our SEO optimization. It's massively transformed our findability. What a great tool.
Yeah, I was just like, if you can use that to further your workload without, demoralizing or like basically getting rid of someone's job, then I'm all there for it. I'm like, I think like in the indie world that we live in, the bridge to what is triple I indie and then triple A could be like, basically lowered there. And then I'm like I guess you could say the hardest of difficulties for developing a game on the indie level can kind of be eased out a little bit. So I'm like, I would love to
Sure.
see AI used in a responsible manner, sort of like the Unofficial Controller podcast or the Unofficial Controller, you use it in a responsible manner, it's perfectly fine. It's
It
what you do
is.
with it that counts.
Wow. Okay. Serving up this next little piece of news, sir.
All right, so on the next piece of the news, I'm inevitable, as Thanos has said. Marvel Rivals closed beta launched overnight, and it's blowing up on on the PC platform Steam. The Steam, as it's the news story. I thought it said the Steam. I was like, oh, I love that. I'm gonna use that all the time. The Steam. But on the PC
From
platform,
now on, we will refer to it as the Steam.
The Steam on the PC platform Steam, the title peaked at over 52,671 players, a staggering number when you consider the online stress test requires an invite to be enjoyed. By comparisons, the recent Concord open beta, which was free for everyone to download and try, peaked at just 2,000, a whopping 2,388 players.
I don't want to say the
Obviously,
writing's on the wall for that game, and I'll let you finish the news piece.
nah, man, that thing's dead as disco. Obviously, a direct comparison in this case isn't fair. Concord is a brand new franchise with a fresh set of characters, whereas Marvel Rivals is fueled by one of the biggest entertainment brands on the face of the planet. Yay, the universe. Yay, the multiverse. And features household names like Spider-Man and Iron Man. Considering they're both hero shooters, though, it does demonstrate the kind of competition Concord is up against. George, what do you think about this story?
I realize now in the hokey cokey way that the next 2 or 3 episodes have been recorded and released, that next week I end up having a conversation with someone about Concord and their play experience with it in line with the larger conversation that we were having. And they say that they thoroughly enjoyed it. They're a fan of Overwatch 1 and 2, and this game to them feels like the sort of game they were looking for. Thing is, throw that in the mix with a game like Marvel's Rivals, with the brand, as you said, with the brand recognition that it's got. Concord has got probably one of the steepest climbs to success that a game has ever seen within its own fight, within its own genre. I know other games have had probably steeper hills to climb, but this game going into this hero shooter pool, which has already fought for everyone's attention for a solid time. How the space for Concord when the next game it's up against is Marvel's Rivals, a game which I personally didn't like the look of, but I can understand why people would. Concord's done.
Oh, I think so too.
I want to be wrong, but Concord's done, baby.
Nah, man. Concord is going to be this year's Battleborn. You remember the Battleborn game?
Well, just.
So, I mean, in that space of like hero shooters, you got what, Overwatch 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You got Apex Legends.
Yeah.
You have Marvel Rivals.
Yeah.
And some people would say Plants vs. Zombies, maybe, well, and then you have, I mean, it's kind of a hero shooter, but that's for the kids.
Well, if that's a hero shooter, I don't know who I am anymore, but okay.
But okay.
Let's
and
frame
Team
those
Fortress, which is still popular.
Yeah, exactly. Where does Concord land and sit, and how does that work? I don't know. I don't think it looks very good. I think it might tie up players on console, but we're only talking PlayStation at this point. Yeah, do you know what? They've got a big installed user base. Do they have on PS5? It's okay. But if it's only generating as part of a free beta, 2,500 concurrent players, I want to say something positive about Concord, but I can't.
I haven't played the game personally, so I can't speak to the quality of the game itself. And at this point, I don't think I'm going to. But like, I see the writing on the wall, though. We live in a world where games as a shooters are games as a service are dying left and right. This feels like it's going to be another one of those. Plus, the looter shooters, as you described, is like a stacked genre to basically fight in. I know, like, I don't think you did yourself any favors by being a bootleg Guardians of the Galaxy either. People are already comparing you to Guardians of the Galaxy in a world where you can go play another game in the looter shooter that's coming out as a Guardian of the Galaxy,
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's rough. I don't see this going well for it.
When you sit down to create a game, I guess you do have a look in your periphery. What else is out there? What else has been rumored? What else has been announced? You probably dip your toe into some of the more industry specific conversations and say, hey, what are they on with and who's on with that? And is anyone thinking of doing something like this? And I should imagine when they decide to double down on something like this, they probably thought it was going to be. I don't think anyone would ever thought it was going to be an easy marketplace, but I certainly think they would have known that, those games by now will be quite old. People will be looking for something fresh. It's just unfortunate that Marvel's Rivals has come out roughly at the same time, and I think it's going to suck a lot of the air out of the Concord's wings. I also think that Concord confirmed to be launching at the Helldivers 2 MSRP or RRP, depending on where you are in the world, is also an unfortunate mistake because most of your competitors at this point either launched as free to play or have gone free to play over the period of time in which they've been out. Concord launching at $35.99 GBP, probably an equidistant dollar figure as well. You've really got to be into that because you've got to get up, you've got to get your hand in your wallet, you've got to get out $35, you've got to throw it at the game, you've got to download it, you've got to install it, you've got to play it, you've got to start enjoying yourself. When you can do all of that free of charge with another game, what chance does it have?
So it's funny you should say this because like there's a huge discourse about what to do with Concord. One like industry insider, Paris Lilly from Kind of Funny, and
yeah, we know Paris.
He wrote, and I quote, "Delay Concord, make it free to play, and think about adding a PvE mode to advance the story that you put emphasis on. Launching it next month with a current model is setting it up to fail. I say this as someone who enjoyed the beta and want to see it succeed." I think he hit the head, like he hit the nail right on the head right there.
Saying exactly what I'm saying and you're saying, probably in a slightly more eloquent way. That's why he's on Kind of Funny and not the UCB. But this guy's right. A PvE section, I can't speak for, but I can see that being able to add story elements and a little bit more enjoyability. Let's not forget, Marvel's Avengers wasn't stupid enough to release without a story element, and that story element saved that game.
Yeah, at least it I think you should do something to differentiate it out from like the rest of the genre.
I think Paris is right. I never thought of this before until you read out his quote, but in a universe that they've created with that cinematic videos that they're releasing where we meet the characters, greet the characters, we get to know and enjoy the characters. And I was a big fan of the videos. In the trailer, I actually thought they did a good storytelling way. Sadly, I saw the trailers and was very excited. The reality of actually finding out more about Concord led to disappointment. But if they could lever on some of that intrigue that people like me have got for a story set within what looks to be a great universe, because they've created something good in the universe, in the characters, in the ship, and in the lore that I will probably never get to experience. But if they slip in a PvE section where you can go through either co-op with a friend, perform some of these heists that these characters are famous for, which I don't actually see any element of being able to enjoy in the PvP. I'll need to speak to our colleague and find out if I'm right or wrong on that, because I don't know some of the gameplay specifics. But come on. The main draw that people have taken from Concord so far is, wow, don't these characters look good? Wow, doesn't that universe look amazing? And they're just going to use it as a backdrop for this PvP drivel. Oh, I'm sorry, mate, but it's a big bust. And sadly, Paris is right. A delay, a couple of tweaks would seriously benefit that game. And I think that it would. Thing is, when do you deliver a game like Concord? Because I don't think there is a great time to ever launch a game like that.
I think you delay it till next year, and while you delay it, like you start to get to work on a animated show that can maybe put that animated show on Netflix and try to do what Cyberpunk Edge Runners did for Cyberpunk. And because that was like one of the start of the catalyst of rebranding, revitalizing Cyberpunk.
I think they recognize that, and that's why they're going to release these. I do believe it was a fortnightly or could be a monthly. I stand corrected. Let me know in community.
Yeah, for sure.
But they have already seen this within themselves and plan on releasing their own created content in terms of a video of
You gotta change it up and put that on. You gotta change that up and put that on like a Netflix or something. Something that where like the mainstream is going to care about it though, because
if the quality
YouTube is not going to be enough.
No, if the quality is good enough and the length of the videos is long enough where you can tell a compelling story and get someone hooked in, if they're 3 or 4 minutes, boom, don't waste your time putting it on Netflix.
No, for sure not.
But if you can amalgamate those, thing is, if you amalgamate them and put them out as one 30-minute piece on Netflix with more to follow later next year, I think what you're doing there is you're going to be robbing your own game of the food that you've created to keep people clued into it. Like, why would I play through this game to get to the next video if I can just go on YouTube and watch it now? Netflix, watch it now.
Yeah, I would say you're right, but on the counterpoint, I think like, do you remember what Edge Runners did for Cyberpunk? It revitalized that brand. People were starting to play it even before the 2.0, like 2.0 update came out, and then like on the other side, like to see what was it Arcane had so many people playing League of Legends that had never played that game before just because they wanted to be involved in that world. I'm like, that's where I'm coming from with this. It's like, you got to make the mainstream interested. Right now, the hardcore people can be swayed by the mainstream populace, you know? So I'm like, you really got to be focused on getting this into the eyes and ears of most people as possible and try to make the mainstream care about this game. Because I'm like, without that, this game is going to fail because the hardcore people have already made up their minds about this.
Sadly, and I probably count myself in, I say that, I was never going to play Concord anyway. But I have
See what I mean?
But I have made my mind up based on what I've seen. Well, I knew straight away it was never going to be for me. But let's get that cleared up now.
Yeah.
I knew immediately. Sadly, I say sadly because I was a big fan of the created universe that they've made. Which
you make the hardcore people have FOMO, and that's the only way you get the hardcore people in, where they feel like they're missing out on something. It's like that's it for the hardcores. But if you can have a victory here by making the mainstream people care about this game.
I think that's a good point, and I think that it's easy revisionist history to say now, and I am aware of that. But I think that I think Helldivers hit. It launched at the same time with what, Rise of the Ronin or something like that. I think it was.
Yeah, the Rise of the Ronin was going to be dead. Yeah. Oh, I think it's like Rise of the Ronin was a month after, if I'm not mistaken. Helldivers was February. Rise of the Ronin was like March.
Helldivers launched in and around the same time as one of those big Sony tentpole titles, Rise of the Ronin or something else. I can't remember what it was, but it certainly, that game had all the sides of the double deckers. It had all the hoardings and advertising bills and all that sort of stuff, whereas Helldivers didn't really get it. But when that game launched, the FOMO creation that game put out was insane. Everyone was talking about it.
To your point, Helldivers came out February 8th. February 2nd was Suicide Squad. February 2nd was also Persona 3. And then if you go down to like the bigger games later on that month, nothing caught wind until like February 29th, and that was Final Fantasy. But even then, I don't think Final Fantasy was as big as PlayStation wanted it to be because Helldivers came out, you know?
Hey, listen, I think that the first episode of Final Fantasy VII hit well. And it crossed a couple of console generations, got PS5 update, Series X update. You know, it took it from a last-gen game to a current-gen game. Fabulous. Also, it took everybody who ever had an original PlayStation, a little penchant for Final Fantasy. It gave them the game they probably always wanted. But a lot of them were casuals. And I should imagine by the time they'd fiddled around with the first one and or completed it and bounced off of it, I should think the actual people that are interested in the second game, although large, was diminished. Each time you're getting a smaller bite of the cherry as those sort of what I would call casuals who remember Final Fantasy VII from when they first got a PlayStation in 1996 or 7, whenever it came out.
I've still never played it.
Boom. But a lot of people have. And I think that's leaving a window of players who feel they maybe can't start the second part because they never completed the first part. When you doorstop off a game that continues a story like that does, it does mean that a lot of players aren't going to touch your first game until they've played the second game until they've played your first, except they've already bounced off the first. So the chances of them playing your second version of that game are slim to none.
You're
And
marginalizing your audience for sure.
every single time. And if we get to a part 3, which we know is coming, it's further marginalized. So the biggest bite of the cherry they will ever have was in that first game. That gave people that 20-minute intro they remember playing as a kid, and that's about all they want. Sadly,
The best thing they can do for it is when they come out with a third game, like come out with the first, second, and third game all in one pack, to where everyone can jump on at that same time.
and that will be the moment, I think, when that sets on fire. Because at that point, I don't know. I mean, in a physical form, it's got to be a multi-disc effort, hasn't it? Right. So that's already a special edition box. So digitally, it's a no-brainer. It's easy. Physical, that's tough. And you're probably going to be deep into the region of like 120 books for the game. But it will be the complete story that's being told that you can start and finish, which I think is also an important point about this game. You can start it, but you cannot finish it. Fact. And I think that's burning them, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So
let's I don't know where we got to, but I feel we ought to give out our contact details so people can get in touch with the show. Let us know if we've made any mistakes. How would they do that, Seb?
all right, if y'all want to reach out to us, if we missed anything, if you have an opinion on anything, if you just want to talk about all the topics we've been talking about, you can hit us up at the Collective Masses on the Instagram, the Instagram, the Twitter, the Raven Owl. Also, if you want a chance for us to read out your questions, you can do it at questions@unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com, or you can DM us at those respective social media outlets. You can also talk to us on the Discord if you want to interact with the podcast champion tag team champions of the world. You can hit us up right there. But
the fat ass Georgie George and the honed and toned Triple S.
But yeah, that's where you can hit us up. Just send us a message in the Discord, or just hit us up at questions@unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com. And the links to those will probably be in the description of this episode. Thank you all so much for listening.
Absolutely. We will do the tiers at the end of the show, but should you wish to support the show, right at the bottom of the show synopsis, there's a link. It says support the show. Click that. Takes you to a little area, all private, all done securely through our podcast provider. Click what you think we're worth. Happy days. At the end of the show, we're going to regale the tiers. And yeah, thank you.
All right, now, George, it is time to see. It's time to see what's coming out this week. So what time is it?
It's pasta time. It's pasta time. It's time for a peek in what we affectionately call Pasta Longhorn Smock. What's nestled between some cult paraphernalia and a dodgy copy of Battlefield Earth this week? These are new release highlights of July 29th to August 4th, 2024. Listeners, these are out in digital or physical, or will be by the time this podcast is in your feed, but could be. I don't want you to ever forget this, but they could be region dependent. I look at Pasta Longhorn and his smock doesn't seem to be particularly bulgy to me. So I'm going to give him a quick reach round and I'm going to pull out this. It's Zenless Zone Zero, the only thing he's brought for us. I don't upset Pasta, but I do believe Ray used to bring us a lot more. But Pasta's brought us this. It's Zenless Zone Zero on the PC and PS5, July 24th, 2024. Don't go into the hollows. I know, there are ether resources in the hollows, bizarre creations, even ruins of the old civilization, all invaluable treasures. But don't forget about that spatial disorder, the monsters and mutants running rampant. Ultimately, this is a disaster that could swallow the world. Hollows are not where ordinary people should go. So don't go in the hollows.
It sounds like Kingdom Hearts.
I was trying to think, what is this like? And I couldn't quite make my mind up. It's an anime-inspired Japanese Eastern influence storytelling. So fits into.
Oh, we haven't had one of those this year yet.
Oh, exactly. And they keep putting them out. You'd think they'd be like, oh, he seemed to be performing on an ever-declining scale. Do you think we might have oversaturated the market a little bit? No, well, get the game out anyway.
And the crazy thing is, like, a lot of these haven't even been Square Enix. Square Enix is the one who's known for throwing out like 25 of these things in the span of 4 weeks.
I'm going to chuck it out there. I feel like they learnt their lesson. I feel like they diluted themselves so much last year that some of those great games just didn't even break the meniscus. It was a busy year. It was an even crazier time to put out that amount of games. It's just insane.
You mean they did break the mold when they came out with Harvestella?
No. The sad thing is, right, any other day of the week, especially if they hadn't robbed themselves of their game's success, Harvestella could have been quite the runaway cult game. And some would argue it is. Our own RGT is.
Shout out to him. I'm relying on him to save us from Pastor Longhorn, but I digress.
We're waiting on him clearing the fence Steve McQueen style on his moped and getting us to safety. At the minute, I think he's just, I don't know. I feel like he's got a contract somewhere else. He got under the fence, he legged it, and I ain't heard hide nor hair of him.
Man, you got they put out Forspoken, Octopath Traveler, a Final Fantasy game, a Dragon Quest game, a Star Ocean game, another Dragon Quest game, another Final Fantasy game, Foam Stars, another Final Fantasy game. That was last year, by the way. And that's not even
Foam Stars, dude. Oh, God.
I'm like, that was just last year. This year, they have looks like 6 games on the docket as of right now that have release dates. And they still have
That's more manageable. 6 games, a big publisher like that with different houses all over the place makes a lot of sense to me.
They got 24 next year.
No.
24 next year.
I guess I said they'd learn. I guess they didn't learn.
Nah, they were just resting for next year.
Just getting their school bag ready for another full term.
I think we should do that in 3 weeks' time. I should just name out a Square Enix game, like a title of a game, and you're going to tell me if this is a real game or if this is false.
Like, if you'd have told me Foam Stars and I didn't know anything about it, I would have said that's false.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. That's not a real thing. Who would do that?
Who would do that? That can't be real. It sounds like a Mickey Mouse version of Splatoon. It's not going to happen. Well, guess what? He did. And it's performed as well as you'd expect, i.e.
All right, so George, we're nearing the end of the show. What are you hoping to play this week?
Oh, that was slick. God, I love you. Just a pre-warning as well. Just a pre-warning as well. Next week's episode will not be anywhere near as slick as this one. We bring back an old friend, and we have what I can only describe as one of the loosest shows you've ever heard in your life. But
it's going to be slicker than a pig covered in hot butter.
Ooh. That sounds like the thing I'm going to order on completion of this episode to satiate my hunger. What am I hoping to play? Well, do you know what? I'm going away on holiday, so what I'm looking forward to is obviously the Portal does not work without Wi-Fi, so we will default to Mark 1 Switch, and I'm looking forward to just getting stuck into the library. Do you know what? I say that. Let's face facts. I'm going to play a hell of a lot of Wrestling Empire and not a lot of anything else. Are
you going to be just playing Wrestling Empire while listening to Green Day Holiday? Well, mostly on your break there
on a Lilo. No, I think I shall be cross-legged in Pastor Longhorn's yurt because we're not actually allowed to leave the combine. He just lets us have a couple of weeks in a yurt. I'm going to go in the yurt. He's going to give me access to my confiscated items, so my tech. He's going to give me my Switch.
Okay.
I'm just going to... Actually, I'm going to say it on air now and hopefully compel myself. This is what Pastor would do. Compel yourself, son. I'm going to compel myself to play Metroid Prime Trilogy, son, on a Switch.
Godspeed to you. I played the first game for the first time. Godspeed to you. Godspeed to you. I played the first game, Metroid Prime remastered last year. And it was my first time ever touching one of those games. And I could not reason with myself why everyone drank this Kool-Aid. In 2002, I understand that completely.
In 2002,
I understand that completely.
Damn tasty Kool-Aid, boy.
Yeah, but I was just like, in 2024, this is the king that was promised.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is the king. Yeah, okay. And I've got some bad news for people because if they think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be any different, no, it's using the same engine, guys. I don't know quite what you're expected, but it's using the remastered engine, which those games are. Now, you didn't get the privilege to play the GameCube version, but the Switch version might not look it to your new eyes, but is actually a full ground up rebuild of the first game. They've done it so well, and this could not be deemed as a compliment, but they've done it so well you can barely tell, right? But if you ran those side by side, your jaw would be on the floor at the difference. All redrawn.
I don't think the visuals of it is bad or anything like that. I think it is a remastered of an old game, so you want to keep the legacy of the old game intact, and
You've got to keep the controls, yeah. And I was doing some research. Actually, it's actually got the old game running underneath it, just to make sure it didn't leave any of that class and elegance behind, or that sort of, maybe if someone's very conversant with Prime, they would, you know your timings, you know your enemy appearance points, you know all that stuff. They didn't want to take that away, which I do find interesting. I feel like a remix would have given those returning players a little bit something different to get stuck into while enjoying the same game. But it is actually proper warts and all dressed up retelling. I don't have an issue with it. I always thought it was a good game back in the day. I can understand your criticism about.
I think my criticism is that I'm a story centric guy in that age, and when I was playing, when a lot of people were playing Metroid Prime, I was playing Halo, and I feel like they are very different in what they're trying to accomplish, sure, but I feel like one, even though it's a convoluted story, it's trying to tell a story, versus Metroid Prime, even in the remastered version, doesn't do a great job of making me care about who this character is and making me care about the plight of that character.
Bizarrely, I don't think that there are some Metroid games. Metroid M, I think it is, on Wii, that have had more kind of story elements stitched into them.
I wanted to care about Samus. Like, I played this character. I don't
think there's ever been a game with Metroid that makes anyone care about Samus. I think our care for Samus comes from nostalgia. I don't think barely a line on screen ever. Barely any, apart from fan fiction and some of the stuff mentioned in the lore of the games that we've had. No real sort of deep dive on them, their personality. I just think that the game sadly has to stand on its own 2 feet. And because of the world that it's in, it probably struggles to tell a good narrative the way that Halo does. Halo is able to kind of
even then, I don't think Halo's narrative is perfect. I think when you get to outside of 3, when you start to get to in the weeds of 4, 5, and 6, it's bad. It's actually really bad.
Yeah, but to take your point on board, of its stablemate at the time of its launch, it was up against a game like Halo, and Halo does tell a more cinematic story.
It at least tries to make you care about those characters. It's it tries to make you care about the plight. And I went through Metroid Prime not knowing why I was doing what I was doing. Instead, it just felt like a puzzle game that gave me a gun that I needed to try to figure out the next piece of the puzzle. And I had no investment of really why I was here in doing the things that I was doing. And I think that was my concern with Metroid Prime. And I ended up finishing that game more out of obligation of trying to see what the hubbubaloo was about versus actually enjoying the game.
The rigmarole.
The rigmarole, yeah, as they say. Instead of actually enjoying that game on face value of what it actually is.
Yeah, I get that. And I think that'll be evident to me when I begin my playthrough, and I may bounce off it for that reason. Like I say, I enjoyed it on Cube. I think what you got to remember about that game is when it launched on Cube, some of the things it was doing hadn't really been done before. There's times where you get your visor iced and you get those little frost particles coming in on the side of the screen. No one had ever seen that before. The way the hood and the mask is detailed, the way you can see your reflection of your eyes and partially of your face on the screen as light reflects off the internal visor and back again.
Mm-hmm.
No other game was doing that. So there are some things within it, narratively wise, that it's doing
it's actually really cool. Yeah.
Really cool.
I could appreciate that. It's just I never played. I didn't have a GameCube growing up. So I'm all the things that I'm playing are especially with the Switch generation, are games that I'm looking at without the rose tinted glasses from nostalgia. So I'm looking at them for the first time. And a lot of the times, like unfairly so, I'm judging them on the basis of what their contemporaries was either doing at that time or
I think of it
games
this
that are
way as
compared to
well.
now.
I think that single player games, and by that I mean where you play as one solo character through a game, are always going to struggle to impart a narrative because you've got no audience. You've got no audience participation in there. So normally you can add another character, a side character, a non-playable character that asks questions about the world. So what's that? Oh, that's the lift up to the second level. Oh, all of a sudden, without needing to do it in text, you've learned that's the next transition area to go up to the next level. When you only have one person in a game, and I think that oh God, the name's gonna. What was Ninja Theory's last game? Hellblade: Sensuous Sacrifice. Okay,
Yeah, for sure.
that's the first time I personally have seen them able to execute a narrative where one person is having an internal monologue with themselves, and I think we probably needed that game to be able to understand how something like, because Metroid Samus is all on her own in a remote part of space trying to fight these guys as a bounty hunter, really. So unless she's speaking out loud, which is a strange thing for somebody to do, the only way that we could understand Samus's thoughts is if we could hear her in a monologue. That was an idea and a concept that in 2004 was not even in someone's mind, So I think going forward, some of these single player solo games will be able to expand on the narrative in the universe by having them question themselves in their own inner monologue. Sadly, when Prime first came out and the remastered version, although they could have learned, but they didn't change anything and to be respectful to the source material, that game, imagine how different that game could have been if the inner monologue had been in there. Like, oh, okay, here we go again. I'm allowed one swear, I used it there. Or,
I agree with you. It's like that character is vanilla, but in the same way Zelda's vanilla, because like you never get personality from them. It's
but
only
you have
the
more
objective.
supporting NPCs in Link's universe to
propel story and
to push the narrative, to further explain the world that you live in, to give some laminate layers to the lore of the universe that you inherit. It's a lot easier to sort of push that information onto you when you are in a universe that's populated by not allies per se, but certainly people that aren't looking to shred you, which obviously
I think in that same context, and with your point being like with only being that solo person in that universe, I'm like, then I have to compare it to Journey, and it comes up lacking against Journey. To where Journey, I think, tells a rich story.
But, in a chronological point of view,
it did come out 8 years before Journey did, though. So
that's what I'm saying.
Too.
Yeah. The whole video game genre moved on quite a lot between 2004 and probably midpoint of the 360 era. We'd learned a lot of things as gamers, as developers, as anybody really. The whole genre was able to move on once we got into the true HD era. And I think
you make a good point, because I think indie games have done a really good job of telling like a one character specific, no other characters around you stories. Whereas like back then, that was probably a mountain to climb of actually doing that. So I'm damning a game like in the past for comparing it to where games are now in an unfair way, admittedly, but like it's hard to turn that part of my brain off,
Yeah, and indie developers for the longest time have relied on text to screen. Which
for sure.
I'm not against per se, probably because I'm from an era where that was the only dialogue you ever got in a video game. But now I think that text to screen, even in an indie, is starting to feel a little bit outdated.
Yeah.
I can forgive it in an indie at the minute. But in 5 years' time, can I forgive it in an indie? It's going to have to be a very particular game to get away with it.
Okay, so would you rather have the text to screen or the Nintendo classic?
It's the same deal, isn't it? It's just got
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like,
you've got a super annoying noise in the background.
I was just like, if Animal Crossing, Zelda, and let's just say Animal Crossing, Zelda, and all that still have those tropes of like, we don't really have voice characters for everybody, so we our way through the game with text bubbles. Is that still going to impair your enjoyment of video games then?
Yeah, yeah. Let's make this clear. I don't think Nintendo have got any excuse anymore, right? They've moved to a card again, fair enough, okay, but there's enough room within that and the downloads, which we hate, but you can use to bolster the file size of the Switch cards. I see that from them as a point of view of trying to keep costs low. Saves on localization massively. It could be any language, right? And you just change the stuff on the screen to be the language of the chosen area. It's super easy to localize the game. You've saved a massive cost. Your localization team is probably half the size. And your voice acting team is one guy who goes dibby 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 into a microphone. I mean, it's the cheapest of cheap ways from what I would call one of the biggest and best video game developers in history. In fact, one thing that Nintendo has managed to avoid to this point is telling any kind of meaningful motion captured story. Now, that maybe isn't their vibe and it's maybe not their audience's vibe, but they have left themselves massively open. Sony've got their own motion capture studio that they rent out. Microsoft Studios have motion capture facilities. I know they've got one at the Initiative, right? I think that's what it's called. They're kind of dream developer places. I think I'm pretty confident they've got one there. Nintendo don't have anything. They don't have any trained resource. They don't have any investment in that at all. And as we move to the 4K era for Nintendo, which the Switch 2 will probably do docked, or they'll feel forced to do an upscaled.
Ooh, I'm so conflicted if they're actually going to pull the trigger on 4K.
Docked?
I think people might be very disappointed, and they're just going to have to get over it. But anyways, we're running low on time, man. So
yeah, okay. Well, either which way they do that, that's. I just don't feel they've got another generation where they can get away with the dibby dibbies. But, that's a conversation for when we get back from leave. In the meantime, though, what are you hoping to play, good sir?
I'm kind of hoping to. I'm just going to be trading water for a little bit. I think I'm going to be playing a little bit of some indies here. I got a code for a game called Vampire Therapist, where you're basically it is almost in the same vein as like Interviews with a Vampire, a show that's really popular right there. So it's kind of like a video game version of that. I'm going to be playing a little bit of that. I'm going to be playing I am going to try out Star Wars Bounty Hunter in a little bit. I don't necessarily think that's going to be a good game, but I've never played it before.
Okay, just so you know, that already kind of had a release and it's got re-released.
I think this is the third or fourth re-release. I just never played it before.
I think this will be the third. If you say you've heard good things about this, I'm literally going to drive to Texas now and pull your tongue out.
No, I was about to say I've heard terrible things about this game, and I wanted to see how I wanted to see how bad this thing is in person. It's almost like when
it crept out on PS2, it wasn't a bad game amongst the filter of other licensed games that are around at the time. Quite how this game has remained relevant to this day. It's been on PS4 to download for the longest time. I think now it's going to be on everything to download. Why? The game is broken midpoint as well, to the point of almost being unfinishable. So
if I had to pay for that, I'd be pissed. I'm talking about ticked off.
Oh, I would advise anybody right now, if you want to experience it, go dig your PS2 out the loft and go grab that game for 50p if you don't own it already. Okay, don't throw good money at this. Not like this, guys. Not now. Okay. Not like this. Okay.
So I'm just gonna be playing a couple of indie games and
after I've ruined your gaming experience.
No, yeah, I'm like at this point I'm just gonna be playing a couple of indie games, I don't have anything I fell in love with yet this month. So I'm going to be trying a couple of things, see what sticks.
To that point, I'm starting to wonder whether I'm even into games anymore, because I'm struggling to find anything that really sticks to rotation, and I'm like getting a little bit paranoid and anxious about it. But
it's you and I think, have some differences in taste in video games, but like our high taste are kind of, I think, align a little bit more. And we haven't seen PlayStation or Nintendo put out anything like major this year. And I feel like that's part of the reason why it feels like a empty year, all things considering.
Yeah.
I don't have any Nintendo games to really dog on because they haven't really put out anything. And you don't have any Nintendo games to fall in love with besides the throwback ones. And I also don't have any. I'm like, PlayStation, that over the shoulder, their over the shoulder style games are probably our premier, like, premium games as far as like the stuff we love. And that hasn't come out in a very long time. It's gotten to a point where I'm almost thinking about doing something I never do, and that's going back and replaying games. And because I never go back and replay anything, man. And Ghost of Tsushima is calling my name right now, like that kind of.
I haven't had the fortune of playing the DLC for that, right? And
yeah,
I would
Iki
be quite,
Island.
Yeah, exactly that. I'd be quite intrigued to. I did actually download. I've got the director's cut version, which includes the DLC as part of a package on PS5. I think free.
The sound of that feels like it's like, oh, that's exciting.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that game. I think I played, and this is me all over, I played a lot of it black and white in Japanese voice only with text.
Oh, I bet that was
subtitles.
amazing.
It was. At times, the black and white held it back because the color palette of that game is so beautiful. The design of that game is.
I want to see them do like grayscale instead of like grayscale is a third option in the second one, where like they do mostly black and white, but then they have like the blood trails actually be like red blood that comes out, almost like that fresh pop. Oh, that'd be dope.
That would be fire. I
think like I'm craving that style of game, and I'm also like, I've only played one Metal Gear Solid game in my life, and that was Phantom Pain. And I'm like, I would love to play another Phantom Pain. Yeah, I've never actually played the original ones, but I would love to actually go back, and when that remake comes out, I am dying to actually get my hands on that as well. So that's the kind of style of games I'm kind of like craving for on the higher end scale of things.
This is gonna get. No doubt, this is going to get a lot of hate, me saying this, but like I think 4 is my favorite.
Which one is that? Sons of something?
Is it Sons of Liberty? It's on PS3 anyway. It's an exclusive on there, and I just think it's one of the greatest games I've played.
Guns of the Patriot.
That's it, Guns of the Patriots. It's one of the greatest games I've played. It is flawed. It's broken in many ways. It looks old now because it's on PS3 and it's obvious when you play it. But there are moments where it looks stunningly beautiful. And I don't know, it hits all that highbrow kind of nonsense that I like. It's very much a game of its time, but it feels way more Death Stranding than maybe the other games do. For that reason.
Now that we're talking about it, that Ubisoft, the style of games, just sounds appealing at this moment. To get yourself lost in that style of world, it just sounds
exactly
fun at this point.
When there's nothing else, a Ubisoft Star Wars game starts to taste like caviar.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's gonna be so weird. Okay, so
I'm hyped for it. Let me just do these tiers for the listeners.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you've enjoyed what you listened to today and you want to support us, we don't ask you to, but if you'd like to, please feel free to. The show will always be free to everyone out there that wants it. But if you want to support us in any way, here's your tiers. $3, you get read out on every show, as you're about to hear. $5, you get read out on every show and art merch yearly. $8, read out on every show, art merch yearly, plus an access to Inglorious Chat. $10, you get read out on every show, art merch yearly, plus access to the Inglorious Chat and quarterly Zoom chat with hosts. Amazing. I would say that if you're looking at joining now, obviously we did have our early adopters pack. That's now obviously iced because we want to make it special for those people that jumped on board day and date, day one. But if you join now, you get a special Georgia promise. You're going to get yourself immediately a UCP t-shirt, just because we want to show you that we appreciate you and we don't want you to wait a whole year before you unlock your next piece of merch. We do want to say thank you immediately with something nice, which is a t-shirt. So there you go. I guess if you want free, actually, I've said that. You're probably not going to get one of those at $3 because come at me with $5 and we can talk. Just because t-shirts, I don't know if you know this, Seb, t-shirts aren't free.
What?
In fact, in limited runs, they're probably going to be one of the most expensive items in your wardrobe. So, yeah, and we're not looking at bundling up and making people wait. So we will order individual T-shirts, as we have done for our most recent joiner, Carlos. So let's start the name off with Carlos, the George #1 one-man fan club. The only fan club I need, quite rightly. In fact, I'll tell you what, Seb, while I got my teeth in, I'll do these.
Okay, gotcha.
Or have you got the list?
Yeah, I got Trestles New York, Bada Bingsta, Tingle Turner, Digital Monkery, Roasted Space Monk.
Tingle.
Tingle.
Tuna.
Tuna. Oh, okay, my bad. Tingle Tuna.
Tuna.
Digital Monkery. Sorry about the accent, everyone.
No, the accent makes it. You've done Digital Monkery, so I'm going to do Roast Space Monk. You're going to do...
The Digital Gram?
No.
Or is it Gran?
The Gaming Gram.
Oh, dude, man, I am context not in. Sorry about that.
And these are your the Gaming Gram's probably your #1 fan club.
I have a #1 fan club, man?
Yeah, it's a Gaming Gram. You just desecrated him. I'm going to say thank you.
I apologize. I apologize.
I'm going to say thank you to Bulb Border, Boba, the sexy yet statuesque Marathon Gaming.
All right, Seal Master Elliot.
My red-headed, chiseled in stone, Midland warrior, Ginge, my red-headed stepchild.
The lovely Emma Sharp.
Just to confirm she's not on the apps. Followed very closely by the Lord of Darkness, a.k.a. the exquisite Harvey Retro.
Nowhere near Berlin.
In fact, you need to remind me to get you to tap up for the single-player experience Nowhere Near Berlin. I think it would be a good interview for you because their game Forever Skies is ready to pop.
All right.
I must thank Mumsy. I can't bring myself to thank the next person.
I'll do it for you. The incomparable group known as RGT Fan Club.
Until he comes back and rescues us, I don't know what to say. I tell you what he's like. He's like Pablo Escobar right now. The show is RGT. He's in hiding. So that means I'm going to say thank you to the legendary Pete Brocklehurst.
Billy Marmite.
He's not everyone's cup of tea, but he might be yours. I'm going to say thank you to Simon Pryke.
And Fat Zan Give.
That gets better every time. We've done the what you've been hoping. We've done the thank you to everybody that listens and supports us financially. And listen, guys, thank you for that. It's the icing on the cake that makes this show very doable. And we're very excited to kind of bring you extra content as and when we can off the back of all that. And thank you to everyone that listens. It's not in the Discord and doesn't support in any way. The silent but violence that I see, because I see the stats and I love every single last one of you. So don't think that this show isn't about you. It's most definitely about you. But if you want to get in touch with us, as we said at the top of the show, questions@unofficialcontrollerpodcast.com is probably your best and easiest way. So we arrive at the outro, so I must say thank you to you as we welcome in Pastor Longhorn. Come on, Pastor, sit down. That's it. Pull yourself up a beanbag, pal.
We haven't been talking about you bad at all. Hello, good sir.
No. That wasn't us. That was RGT. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yep.
He did say that about you. Yeah.
He's the one who ran off in the middle of the night, by the way.
Yeah, that character. We're here putting in a shift for you, Pastor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You tune it up. It's just tuning up his guitar. So before he rips in with what's becoming now probably one of the greatest pieces of music ever put to recording.
We have it a good authority. It's rising on the charts every single week.
It's outperforming the podcast, which is a miracle in itself. But Seb, thank you so much for taking the time to come on again this week. becoming a regular and a hopefully forever piece of the furniture. I know you keep trying to get away, but I've, passed along once, made sure you're not getting away anytime soon, cowboy. And,
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful to speak to you again. It's been really good. I'm going to hit the outro if you don't mind.
All right, let's do it.
That's all we have time for this week. Listeners, always thank you for your time. We look forward to the pleasure of speaking to you again next week. Until then, happy gaming. Remember, there's nothing wrong with being given the unofficial controller. It's what you do that counts. See you, Seb.
Aye.
Take it away, Pastor.
George and Seb rolling down the road. RGT riding shotgun, a heavy load. Pastor Longhorn waiting to unfold. In El Paso, Texas, tales been told. One arm big, a sight to see. Pastor preach, set you free. George and Seb, they bend the knee. RGT nodding yes in glee. Join the cult in El Paso town, where Pastor Longhorn's got his crown. One arm high, the other down. We're the wildest show around. Sunday's hot, the desert air. George and Seb both feel the glare. Longhorn's words hang everywhere. Salvation found without a care. Sunday's hot, the desert air. George and Seb both feel the glare. Longhorn's words hang everywhere. Salvation found without a care. RGT plays a sacred tune underneath